Now it's time to pull out a couple of cubes and add some whiskey and see what's going to happen to this thing.
Hey, Rob, is that a Trend Grove product, acrylic ice?
Yeah, you know, it could be. More than likely it is. I've had this for a while, and I bought it from a place called City Photo when they were being sold. I have quite a collection of these. I think I have 200 plus cubes. Acrylic ice is just really important. There's two kinds. There's acrylic and there's glass. Glass is even nicer in many ways. It's even more expensive, but the acrylic is really good. And Trend Grove is the place to go to get it, without question. All right, so I'm just going to take a quick look at a few of these that I brought, and we're going to find something that works. There's too many for that. I'm going to put 2 cubes in there, and I want to get some shards and some things that feel like they have melted. We've also done ice balls quite a bit, you know, the ice spheres. Those are really funky and really weird to shoot because when you put them in the glass and you have part of the ball sticking out, it very quickly melts and becomes a mushroom. The alcohol has a big effect on what's below the liquid level and then not the top. So you have this rounded thing and all of a sudden it'll flip and it'll move and you've got like this weird mushroom shape. It's kind of bizarre. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a look at the ice, trying to find a good spot for it. Do we have any paper towels? Yeah, we do. Awesome. This is where your hands start to get smelly like booze because you start moving things around in there. So whenever I'm pouring liquids, I always brace myself and just try to keep myself very steady with things. I try to avoid drips on the set as much as possible. These glasses are definitely interesting.
So Rob, you say you smell like booze, and if you do lipstick ads, then maybe, good thing the wife knows that you don't come home
It's a good thing she's aware of what I do, yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
I often come home smelling like a distillery. All right, let's take a quick look at that. Damn, I think I'm gonna like that.
Just so I know, are we capturing something only for the bottom and only for the cap, or is that part of 117?
Part of 117.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you guys caught that. So Gary had gone through and he was working on the notes for this, and he just wanted to double check with me to make sure that I had shot the bottom pieces that I wanted. Great digital tech will do that. They'll make sure that they know what I'm doing. I'm shooting components because I'm merging stuff together to composite a bottle. And he's just double checking my work and making sure that I don't get to the end of the day and I miss something. Let's blow up that glass. That glass is
So
cool.
Rob, with this composite photography that you're making this image out of multiple images,
Yeah.
How many photos will you actually take to make that one single composite image? Do you have a set number that you normally target?
No, there's no set number. It all depends on the bottle itself, and every bottle has a different complexity to it. Sometimes you can get them in just a shot or two. Other times like this where you've got to go to light up the golds, like I have half a 12 in one image and half a 12 in another, so those will be bled together. We've already got, what did I say, 7 shots? We've got 7 shots for the bottle right now, so we're going to be merging 7 different pieces to make the one bottle. So that's one of the beautiful things about digital photography. Before, when we were shooting film, you couldn't do that because you could only get so many lights out there. You could only have so much going on. You could only hide so many little cards and stuff behind a bottle before you ran into trouble. Now we can shoot for different components, and you can really build something that's just incredible. And I will tell you honestly, some people are like, well, is that kind of cheating? I don't think it's cheating, because what we're doing is we're using the tools that we have to make something the best that it can be. So we're analyzing little parts of it. It's just like what we do with noodles in a bowl. We want to make sure that the noodles look like they're going the right way. We're doing that with the bottle. We're just making sure that we get all the components of this bottle to make it really look heroic.
Just to be clear, and that was a question from Annie P. Thanks for the question. So when you say components, and you mean the top and the label.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're not talking about components like you're going to take one highlight from this photo, and that will be composited with a different highlight from another photo. Even the highlights themselves are components.
Yeah.
So each highlight could be.
There's this thin highlight that I have right here that's just giving me light on the edge of that facet. I'm probably going to have Aaron take that and duplicate it 2 more times over those other facets. So to me, that's a component. I hit the light on the inside of there on the left side. That's one component shot. Hit the light on the right side. That's another component shot. The 2 different shots that we have going on or actually we only have one for the necker. So when I say components, I'm referring to the different captures that I'm taking for the different pieces of the bottle. Make sense? All right. Any other questions as I go on?
And would you have already, like, in your lead up to the photo shoot, would you have already decided I'm gonna, I'm gonna highlight the edge, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, or is it a combination of once you started shooting, then you see other stuff that you want to bring out?
It's both.
Okay.
It's a combination of knowing what's important to the brand. I know the facets are really important. It's a great shaped bottle, so I want to be able to highlight that. But I have not shot this bottle before. And like I said, every single Budweiser bottle is a little bit different because of the properties of the glass. Even though I've been shooting glass for 20 years, they all throw different things at me. So I get into it, and I want to figure out what it's going to do. I have very preconceived ideas because I have 20 plus years of shooting glass. But there's always a little bit of challenge. There's something I don't know that's going to happen. And I think that's why it keeps me so engaged, even after 22 years. I mean, you think about it, we're shooting bottles. That could get kind of monotonous. I'm not tired of it yet. I really still enjoy it very much. So, thank goodness, right?
And Rob, just to follow up, for people that are just starting out and they're just beginning, if you were to composite, could you just have one light and you could take a photo of one highlight and then move your one light and take a photo of another highlight?
You could. I think that would be difficult because that takes an enormous amount of pre-visualization. And without experience, you don't have a lot of pre-visualization. Ooh, another tongue twister. That could be a very difficult thing to do. Yeah, you could do that. But if you noticed, we did that in a sense of starting with one light and then building up. Then we turned all the lights back off, went to the one light, and then started building it back up just to check everything and see where things were. It was giving us kind of a total picture, and then I was going in and I'm working the details of it. I think if you only had one single light, I don't want to discourage anybody from doing that. I don't want to discourage anybody from trying anything in photography. Just be aware that that's going to be a difficult thing because you're really going to have to pre-visualize what you're doing, and there's going to be even more post work. I mean, we're leaving a good amount of post work, and I'm trying not to. I try to do things as much as I can in camera. So I would just say be cautious with that. Do it. There's nothing you shouldn't try in photography. What rule isn't made to be broken?
One more quick follow-up question to composite photography. For someone just starting out, do you think it's important to learn composite yourself in addition to other photo skills so you don't have to get a professional retoucher?
I think it's really important for 2 things. First of all, I hate retouching personally. I started on Photoshop 2, not CS2, but Photoshop 2. So that tells you that I've been in the business a little while. And in many ways, I'm still stuck on those patterns that I had way back then. But learning how to do it is really important, particularly once you get to the point where you no longer want to do it or you no longer have the time to do it and you turn it over to retouchers. Knowing how to do some retouching will help you immensely in conversing with them and talking about what you want to do. There are retouchers, obviously, that don't need your input, but I think it's one of those lingo things. It's really important to be able to talk the lingo with them. And if you have a background in retouching, it's going to help you all the more. And it also, it makes you a better photographer. When you've had to do the retouching on your own stuff, it makes you think about how you can shoot differently so you don't have to do all that retouching. Or how you can shoot better to make the retouching easier. So absolutely, learn it. It's going to make you better.
One more?
Okay.
Okay, Jim Bada Bim wanted to know how you deal with reflections of your equipment on the glass. Or do you see that?
Right now, I'm not seeing it. We'll have to blow it up a little bit tighter. I'm really not seeing much of that at all. Most of the stuff that I have is black. Like my camera stands in the studio, they're black. I don't have a ton of stuff that's reflected and reflected back in. And usually I'm wearing very dark colors. I just have a propensity for it. It definitely helps. If we're starting to see that stuff, we often do a couple of things. One, we can put a black card in front of the camera and cut a hole for the lens to come through. We can do that with a white card and it pushes light back onto the label. We often do that. One of my tricks that I'm constantly doing, we don't need it here, is we use camera hole diffusion. So we'll take a roll of Roscoe 3808 and we'll put it on a C-arm, drop it down, cut a hole for it, and put the lens coming through it. I'll even put my polarizer on the other side. And then we can have lights on this side, and we can push light back into the product, and it really helps give it, you know, more warmth, more glow, more light. And it eliminates any reflection that I have. So, I mean, you can see how nice and diffused that is. So if you imagine hanging that right here, right now, and cutting a hole in it, you can really do some nice stuff with light. We do that with great regularity. I can't even tell you.
Almost every shoot. I mean, we're using this on the side. We'll build a tent around it, in front of the camera, behind it. The nice thing about this is we can create any size softbox that we want. We've taken it a step further and gotten frames, taken the canvas off the frames, and have taped this with white tape onto the frames themselves. So we have essentially like 15 to 20 softboxes that are different sizes that we can throw around everywhere. But it's good to also keep it on the roll so you can make it any size you want and you don't have to cut it.
A great way to make an amazing light is just to go to an art supply store and get a frame stretcher. You know, the kits that you can put together. Put them together, they're cheap, and then put Roscoe on it. Put a light behind it, and you have a beautiful softbox feel. It's gorgeous. And you can do it to any size you want. You can make them thin, you can make them wide, you can do whatever you want, and it's very inexpensive. We do it all the time. So even though we've got all this awesome Broncolor, you know, light modifiers and softboxes and pan heads and all kinds of beauty dishes and reflectors, we'll often go to Roscoe and we'll just make something that fits. We were shooting last week in Chicago for Bailey's Creamers, and the bottles were just reflective jet black, and they were not only were they round, they were bell shaped, and they had every possible curve you could add on this thing was on it. We were shooting on a black surface against a black background with black product with flavor cues. Really challenging stuff. We had Roscoe everywhere. We even double diffused panels in order to get lights to soften up and really look good on that black so we didn't have these harsh lines. It's just a great tool. And it's, I mean, in terms of costs, it goes a long way. You get, you know, one of those rolls is a third of the cost of a light, but you can make, I don't know, umpteen lights out of it. So definitely look into that. Any other questions? Back to booze? Yep. All right, cool. So that's actually looking kind of interesting to me. I think that I want to kill this light because it's giving me that hideous highlight on the front. Let's see what that does, Gary. Whoa, we both fired, sorry. And also going to raise this guy up. Can you pop that? Lots of bubbles.
Bit of green right there.
Yeah. That's probably the keynote, to tell you the truth. All right. Go back to where I had the highlight from the strip bank, please, or from the bar light. Okay. I need that highlight. I need it smaller and closer. So to me, I think it's going to be weird if I don't have a highlight from the strip light coming down on it. It's not going to fit next to the bottle. So I'm going to try to bring this in a little bit and feather it down and make it a little bit smaller. These barn doors are awesome. I don't have any on my strip light, and I'm going to have to get some because now I'm hooked. That's just too easy. Okay. So because of the shape of that glass, it's not going to transfer through the course of it. So I'm going to constantly lower that to see if I can get that highlight to start to round down in the sphere. I doubt that it's going to go. Oh, it's not. I'm going to bring it back up, and I'm going to try to feather it a little bit more. Not bad. Ooh, that looks pretty good when you blow it up, man. Okay, so I'm getting bubbles that are clinging. I'm going to need to knock them out, which is going to totally change my ice, and it'll never go back to where it was. But that's okay, because hopefully I'm going to get something even better. Okay, pop that, please. Oh, this whiskey smells really good. All right, well, you see what happened when I rotated that? All of a sudden, I'm getting a really tough highlight that's coming out off of one of the pieces of ice. Now, blow it back up. Oh, I can't even see that. Okay. Try that, please. Okay, that is starting to get somewhere. But I need to give this a little bit of oomph. So let's see what happens when we start to slip a gold card in.
Oh, looks great.
Gotta wait till my head's out of the way. There, please. Okay. So this gold card is pretty harsh. Whew, man. You can see how it's creating that really tough highlight. It's a little too yellow. I'm not loving where it's going, and you can see how that's just banging. It's really shiny. So I'm going to try one that's much more matte, much more diffuse. I have lots of these cards. I even have some that are really mirrored. Again, you can get this at, there's a place that I go to called Art Mart that has all this stuff. Art supply stores always have gold cards, silver cards. They are indispensable for photographing liquors. Just absolutely indispensable. You can't do it without it. Let's try that. It might be too matte. It's almost like somewhere in between the two.
Yeah.
Let's try that. That's got some interest to me. Okay, there. So what you can see that I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of changing the shape of this. I want to find something that makes it a little bit interesting. So I'm just kind of bending and changing the shape of this card in order to get those facets to do something interesting. Go right there.
I'm not getting an image that's as warm as that either.
I didn't hear what you said.
It's not as warm.
Oh, God. Totally different. All right, I got to come over here more often and look. Wow. Come on, guys, questions. What's up? Anybody got any? I don't know. That's pretty nice, isn't it?
It's nice, but just a little hot. You might want to go that route.
I think I want to go back to
Turn
that
the
one.
light down.
I got a question.
All right.
About the, back to the ice cubes, you mentioned you have acrylic and glass.
Yeah.
How do you decide which one to use? Are there different properties?
Actually, I have
Are
all
they
I have all
different shapes, or-
acrylics. I don't have glass.
Oh, okay.
So that's easy. I go with acrylic.
Why not the glass? Is there something just because they're more fragile?
Because
or more
I've
expensive?
already invested a ton in the acrylics. I like them. You can polish them back up. Like I said, I have 200 of them. I think the glass cubes, if I'm not mistaken, can run almost $100 a cube. So if you need 15 of them, you've just spent $1,500. The acrylics are more like $35, $40 a cube, depending on their size. And like I said, I've made a pretty substantial investment in it. You can get 10 acrylic cubes for a lot less money than you can get 10 glass ones.
Do you have any problems with rainbowing with polarized light?
Absolutely, I do. Which is why you got to go in and you got to start to twist and change, because the acrylic will do that. It's the same thing as the acetate, that we were talking about earlier. It can rainbow, it can give you green, it can give you blue. So you got to go through and you got to mess with it. But yeah, that's the one downside to using the acrylic, and that's an upside to the glass. The other thing that's also really cool about glass, and I've rented glass, you can do that too. You can just rent glass cubes. You can hit glass cubes with a little bit of spray mount, put them in a glass, and then when you pour carbonated beverages in there, the carbonation sticks to the spray mount, which is totally weird. It won't do that on acrylic. The spray mount will eat the acrylic and you'll totally ruin your cubes, and then you got to send them out and have them repolished and all that kind of stuff. So there are advantages to both. The biggest advantage to acrylic is it's a lot more affordable,
What kind of time frame would you have for a product like this normally?
To shoot?
Yeah.
I'd have a full day for this shot, maybe more. I mean, we're doing it in a compressed amount of time, to tell you the truth. We'd have a full day for this.
And is there ever a situation where the people that you're doing the shoot for, they feel that you took too long and they don't necessarily want to pay for that time, or how does that work?
I've never had that issue, no, because we're upfront about the money and how much it's going to cost, and the converse is true. We've had shoots that took a lot longer than we thought, and I never go back to the client and say, oh, you know what, I spent 2 days on it instead of 1, so now you owe me double. The estimate is something that you really have to adhere to. I'm very conscious about their time, so I try to pace it so that it goes well and it goes smoothly. I mean, obviously, I'm a methodical guy. I think people get that about me. If they really had a concern about that and wanted somebody to speed through it, they wouldn't hire me. And maybe that's why they go to other photographers, is because they want a different pace. I think people know me for what I do, like I said, I have a lot of repeat business, so I think they're coming back to me for a reason, thankfully.
Question from the interwebs.
Interweb, bring it on.
All right, cool. So people are wondering about your lighting schematic. And is this something you knew when you were coming into the shot, exactly how you're going to light this? Is this similar to previous bottle shots and glass shots you've done before? Or do you draw up schematics for each?
I don't draw up schematics for each. I always have a preconceived idea of what I want to come to the table with. And it's based on a lot of experience, just years with glass. Knowing my equipment, I didn't use a light meter at all. In fact, I haven't used a light meter in, 10 years. I've just gotten to the point where I really know what I'm doing and how I want to approach things. But again, every bottle is a little bit different, so I come to it with some preconceived ideas, knowing that I want to place this stuff here. And very often, Gary can be or the first assistant can be setting stuff up for me in advance, and I can tell them, okay, this is where I want to start. And it's a foundation. There are some things that are very similar. I almost always have a top light. I almost always have a beauty dish above every liquor shot I do. It's just always there. I'm always bringing light from the backside in order to get them to glow and to make them heroic and to make them sculptural. Those things are given. But since bottles are very different shaped, not everything is the same.
And you learn this by experimenting on your off days
Yeah, doing it again and again and again, and building, you know, working for somebody else all day long as their assistant, and then shooting at night until 10 or 11 or 12, and then coming back the next day and doing it again and again and again, until I got there. And then, but even, you know, even the first few years that I had jobs and I was a working pro, that was a very nerve-wracking time. In many ways, it was way more nerve-wracking than being an assistant, because now I've gained a little bit of knowledge. I know I've got a long way to go, and I'm shooting for clients, and that's when you really feel the clock. So the more you can do on your own, the more practice in the evening or on weekends or whatever, it just gives you a lot more confidence. And when you have confidence going into a job, that speaks of volumes, you know? Because you can turn around and you can talk to the client intelligently about what you're doing and how to make it work.
I was just gonna say, this question's more for Gary than it is for Rob. Like, I think one of the coolest things I've noticed about Rob and the way that he works is it's very organic, and like he's actually out there with the light, moving around and doing stuff himself. I don't feel like I've seen a lot of other lead photographers doing that. Would you say that's something very unique to Rob?
I think in this situation, since he's teaching all of it and he's talking about it, it's easier for him. But yeah, absolutely. I kind of sometimes will just sit back, man the computer.
He stands
make
there
sure,
and looks pretty.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that, you know, everything is backed up, everything is tack sharp. I'm managing the files. That can be, when we're on a tight deadline, that's a full-time job to sit there and focus on that and not be distracted with lights or cards. And we usually have PAs and other assistants running around to move the lights, because at the end of the day, that's not the most important thing. But for Rob, like, he just likes playing with lights and seeing what lights do, because it's a lot harder to tell someone up, down, left, right. No, not that much. It's just easier for him to do it.
Cards in particular are really difficult. To answer your question, I think I am more hands-on than most lead photographers, without question. A lot of them are more into directing and guiding. But trying to tell somebody, no, right there, you know, that, I've done that a million times. It just doesn't work. For me, it's a lot easier if I stick my head in front of the camera and I do it myself. And then I prefer it. I know what I'm getting. And it's the continuing education of Rob Grimm. I continue to learn every time I do stuff. So.
I feel like I'm seeing more of like an artist at work in watching you than I am like some big name photographer just barking orders. So
interesting.
I don't know.
Cool. I like that.
Like I said before, if you were going to work for a studio, I think it would be you two that a lot of people would want to get in with. You guys are.
We might get a couple phone
Fruit
calls after this.
baskets, come on, fruit baskets. What'd I say?
Rob, can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is from Popeye from Israel, and this question came in much earlier. The question is, how important is the medium format versus like a regular DSLR? And for which features that you're shooting right now is the DSLR not going to be able to do? If that makes sense.
DSLRs can really handle a lot of stuff. What I like about the medium format, I'll go back to the crop factor. Everything I shoot is really 11 by 14. I put an 11 by 14 crop on every single portfolio image that I shoot because my portfolio is 11 by 14. It is the standard. As you scale it up, it is almost identical to 8 by 10, which is standard for advertising. So again, the 35 millimeter, the DSLR, it doesn't have that same format. Its ratio is much longer. And you wind up losing image information off of the top and the bottom. I just don't like shooting with them for product stuff. I much prefer a bigger camera with a truer ratio for what the final result is going to be. And you know, again, that comes from back in my days of 4x5 and 8x10 cameras. I just prefer it 100 times over everything else. You can do it, and I'm not saying that you have to go out and get a medium format in order to make images. That's not the case. You just can't do that cost-wise. So build it on a 35 millimeter system, but rent one of these when you can and try it and see what you think of the difference, because it's pretty awesome.
But it doesn't have anything to do with being able to capture the highlights in a certain way. It's more just
well,
the
there's
size
a heck of a
the
lot
image.
more detail. Like I said,
Right.
these lenses, they see everything. They practically read your DNA. The sensors are huge. The pixels are beautiful and they're incredible. I mean, when you blow this stuff up to 100%. Here's a great example. When I was testing the Hasselblad cameras, there was a gal that had been working for me for probably 5 months at the time, but I had known her for several years. She'd even had her wedding reception in my studio. And we're shooting, and I'm shooting images of her, and I've got it coming up on the computer, and I have it blown up to 100%. I was starting to shoot, and then I blew it up to 100% so I could see some of the detail. And I took a shot and I looked over and I was like, oh my God, Lindsay, you wear contacts. I never noticed it with my naked eye. My naked eye never picked up her contacts, and I have talked with her, face to face for years. When I saw it on the screen, I could see it plain as day. And I was like, oh, that detail is crazy. So I've been working with these cameras now for several years, and I'm still blown away by the detail. The detail is just incredible. For me, for what I do, delivering more detailed images that can go up huge, that can be on the side of a building, can be, we've had billboards that have been, several stories tall in Times Square. You got to have a big detailed camera to do that. And for me, the answer is medium format without question.
One other thing about what you see here, I was able to show you where we're cropped. So we're not even using the full frame. We've cropped in, and we can kind of avoid getting too close to the edges where there might be a little bit of distortion. And we don't have to worry about losing any resolution because the system that we use is 60 megapixels, and those are exported, and they're about 200 megabytes big. So we can crop in a little bit and still have a pretty large file.
Yeah, the technology is just incredible. It blows me away, and it gets better all the time. It's just fun, which means you got to constantly buy new tools. Kind of a bummer, but as a photographer, who doesn't want to continue to buy new tools, right? Isn't that why we got in the business?